Hi guys, welcome to the session. I hope all of you can hear me loud and clear today. Good morning, everyone. And this is a session where we are talking about essentially cat prep in the context of how to use my books for the cat and the McGraw-Hill, the series of books at McGraw-Hill. And I'll also be introducing a new book of mine today. In the session, and that's something that is one of the purposes of the session also. And I'll give you a perspective of your CAT prep uh, process on the various areas. So I hope you understand that when you talk about CAT prep, it's basically about four major themes divided across three sections. You've got the quants, you've got data interpretation and logical reasoning, and you've got verbal ability. And as you can see, the first and the major point that I tell people is about cat prep is that it's about. I mean, when you're preparing for the cat, it's not about. I mean, in one line, if I have to summarize what you need to do for cat prep, it's about increasing your ability to think in problem solving situations. So what will happen inside the cat, whenever you look at the cat, what cat tests you for, and in fact, not just cat, any aptitude exam, what it tests you for are problem solving situations, and how you think inside a problem solving situation, and how well you can build up your thinking structures and processes inside problem solving situations is what matters. And in that sense, preparing for an aptitude exam is very different from preparing for a normal college or school exam that you have always prepared for, because school and college exams are not about problem solving. The only small part of problem solving experiences you had in school and college exams were when you should do your maths papers, or if you've done engineering, there would be some exams where there would be a component of problem solving inside a exam, but that also would be descriptive, and you would have time to think about it, and you could write through, and you could this thing. But in an aptitude exam, the major difference, and that's where the whole process starts. Am I audible or not? I think I'm okay. If Surya is not able to hear me, what about others? Can I get some more feedback from others whether I'm audible? I'm audible, no? Right? Fine. So that's okay. Maybe Surya, you can just do a small recast of your, or refresh your session a little bit, so it'll come back. Yeah. So coming back. Thank you, everybody, and good to see all of you today. Good to see all of you today. So, as I said, aptitude. The first thing you need to understand about aptitude prep, which is very different from what you have done in your school and college exam prep, is that you are preparing for problem-solving situations. You're not preparing for memory-based solution-based situations, and hence, when you're preparing for knowledge problem-solving situations, you need experience of those situations, because if you're experiencing a, a knowledge solving situation for the first time, a problem solving situation or a problem solving structure for the first time, it becomes difficult to think in a pressure cooker situation like the cat. So, what you have to ensure during a preparation, what you have to ensure during a preparation, I'll just reply to Surya. So, coming back, so what do you need to work out in the context of your prep processes, whether you're talking about quants, DI, or LR. These three areas, I call these as the solving areas. So when you talk about cat prep, divide your prep first into two kinds of areas. The solving areas, they'll have a similar strategy to each other, and the solving areas for cat prep are quants, data interpretation, and logical reasoning. These are three solving areas. And what I mean by the non-solving area is that when you talk about English, verbal, it is not about picking up your pen and paper and solving something. In maths, what happens when you're solving maths or quants? Uh, Suppose I read a question and I don't see a solution. What can I do? I pick up a pen, I pick up a paper, I start writing equation, I start doing my calculations. I can solve it. LR, same thing. Data interpretation, same thing. But verbal, English, what happens when you can't solve a question? You read a question, you don't get an answer. What do? Can you actually pick up a pen paper and solve it? Can you write some steps? No. So English is more of a reactive area. It's not a solving area. So the prep process for language will be slightly different. You need to recognize that as you start off your prep, that the prep process for language will be not slightly but actually quite different from the prep process for the other three areas. One of the first mistakes people make is that they prepare for English as they are preparing for quants and DI and LR. So please don't make that mistake. The mistake they make is quants, DI, LR. The logic is very simple. It's straight logic. You solve more questions and you learn better inside the questions, you'll be better than me. English, it doesn't work that way. English, you might have solved 500 RCs, I might have solved only 50 RCs, but I might be better than you. Because English is about what my reactive capacities are, what my understanding capacities are in that situation. So I'll give you the processes in both, and then we'll also talk about how to use my books, etc. As we as we start moving on. So the first solving area, of course, quants, and you all know this book. This is the 8th edition currently of this book, How to Prepare for Quantitative Aptitude for the CAT. And this book, in a sense, it's a 1 hour session, Ariman. So coming back, so this book basically I've divided the quants into 6 parts: block 1, block 2, 3, block 4, block 5, and block 6. So when you're preparing your quantitative aptitude, typically depends on how much time frame you have to prepare for. If you're looking at a CAT 21 kind of a framework, then you are preparing in a 14-month framework. If you're looking at CAT 20, you are down to just 2 months. So essentially, depending on what time frame you have, the timeline that you have available for preparation, you will need to allocate timelines to actually. First, of course, the first step to do any chapter from the book is to first read the theory of that book. Read the theory, read the solved examples, read the back to school. On every block, I've put a back to school part where I've tried to fill in the missing gaps between what people should know out of school, which people have forgotten. A lot of you have left maths for a long time. So this is something which you need to work on. So step 1, of course, on each of these chapters is to get the theory done and the solved examples done. And then in my book, there are level of difficulty 1, 2, and 3. I'm quite sure most of you have seen them. Level of difficulty 1, 2, and 3 on a lot of the chapters. So if you look at, and a lot of people keep asking me this question, do we need to solve LOD 3, etc. So my answer is that it can't be a one size fits all curve. So it depends on what percentile you are targeting for. Perhaps if you are targeting a 90-95 percentile, LOD 1 and 2 should be enough on all chapters. Right? There are a couple of chapters in which there is no LOD 2 also. There's percentage allegations which I remember, which has no LOD 2. It's only an LOD 1. It's only an LOD 1. This thing. So I think Surya and Abhishek are having some tech issues. The technical team is getting in touch with them and helping them out. So we can just ignore them for the time being, and that's why I'm not responding to them individually. Otherwise, normally as a teacher, you need to respond to people. But anyway, let's come back to it. I think it's all fine from my side. So it's not. I don't need to fix something which is not broken. So anyway, let's come back to this here. So first step is of course this. Now you need to find. I mean, when you start preparing, you need to define the timelines for yourself. Okay, you need to define the timelines for yourself. So for example, if you look at number systems and progressions, block 1. Uh, a comfortable timeline to cover it is between 4 to 6 weeks. Whereas a quick timeline, if you are in a 2 month framework and you're just starting off, or you want to just make sure that you this thing, it can even be done in 5-6 days, right? So the shortest timeline is 5-6 days for block 1 and around 6 weeks in block 1. So there are 6 chapters. So if I talk about the prep process in Quants, I would think that LOD 1 and 2 is compulsory in all the chapters. You should ideally go through LOD 1 and 2. Or LOD 1 2 में जब जाओगे, when you go into LOD 1 and 2, you'll find a couple of things, and this is, I'm trying to address both these questions: how to use the QA book, and also in how to prepare parallelly with that, because they are intertwined with each other. So when you go into the LOD 1-2, I'm quite sure that there will be questions which you will not be able to solve. This happens for everyone. And what percentage of the questions you can't solve will basically be dependent on how many on what your current skill levels are. And when you go through your LODs, when you go through your LODs in a chapter, and you go through LOD 1 and you go to LOD 2, what will happen is you'll have 4 kinds of experiences and questions. One kind of experience will be where you start the question, and in one shot the question goes through smoothly for you. There's no issues. The question just goes through smoothly. The second experience you'll have is where the question is a little bit tough for you, but ultimately, so it creates some problems for you, but ultimately you are able to get through. The tick means that you ended up happily on that question. The third question type is where it's similar to the second, but the outcome is the differential. You are able to think through for some part, but ultimately the last outcome is that you're not able to solve it. And the fourth outcome is where you have absolutely no idea or very little idea about what to do in this question. So what I tell people is that what is important while using my books, and this is important for both DI, LR and Quants, all 3 areas, all the solving areas. Accept that this is going to happen. Please accept that this is going to happen. Because as I tell my students, and anybody who cares to ask me, as I tell them that in case you pick up a set of questions and everything went like this, it could mean only 2 things. One thing is that you are ready for the cat. You pick up LOD 1, everything went like that, like a dream. You pick up LOD 2, everything went like a dream. So it means you are prepared. और कुछ करने की जरूरत ही नहीं है तुमको. और अगर तुम तैयार नहीं हो, if you're not ready for the cat, then a good question bank will give you this experience. My objective is not to give you this experience, because if that was my objective in my question banks, then obviously the outcome would not. The outcome is, ultimately the reason the books are written is so that you can score high in the exam, in the CAT. And if that is not justified, that is not created, it's useless. Everything is useless. So that's what I was trying to say, that accept the fact that this will happen. What you do next is the most important part. And this is important for both DI, LR and Quants. What people do, what most people do, and I cry myself force over it, and this is the wrong process to prepare. What most people do is that they ask around. And with so many online gurus available nowadays, you have hundreds of teachers to ask from various sources. You ask them around, what do I do in this question? They tell you. And that's the perfect way to spoil a learning opportunity. You ask, they tell, and that's the perfect way to spoil a learning opportunity. What I suggest instead of that is that you go through LOD 1 in one round. Let's say there's a percentage breakup between these for you in LOD 1. 40% went this way, 30% went that way, 10%, 20% went this way, and 10% went that way. So you break up that, and maybe 3 weeks down the line, give a gap. After 3 weeks, come back to your LOD1. When you do a chapter of the first round, do LOD1 and 2 both. After 3 weeks, come back to the questions, to the LOD1 and 2, and revise these, redo them. There'll be a lot of value in redoing them, because in this question type, you'll start finding a second round on the same topic. You'll start finding your shortcuts. You'll start finding other ways. As you know, in aptitude, there are 5, 5, 6, 6 ways of solving an individual question. And sometimes it's not always possible to write all the solutions to everything, to every question, because already my book is being criticized for being too thick and too heavy. So if I start writing 5 solutions to every question, which is there in a lot of cases, so they would end up being a 3,000 page book, which would not be feasible for you to buy or me to sell, or you to study from. So that's one of the reasons why inside the book I do my thought process is very simple in all my books. Yeah, I'll hold your hand till this point, and then I want to leave you. Because ultimately you have to go out and walk in the world. I cannot hold your hand when you're in the exam. If you're prepared from my books, I cannot hold your hand if you're in the exam. So plan a second round, plan a third round if required. And what will happen in your second, third round, the questions which you were not able to solve in the first round, 2-3 hafte baad, when you come back to the same questions, the previous thoughts that you learned. See, whenever you go through one round of any chapter, you start getting more connected to that chapter. You start understanding a little bit more in that chapter. Even if you solve only 40% question, it doesn't matter. The idea is that the day you can solve the entire question bank, the way I've structured my book and the problems inside it, the way you solve the entire question bank of the book, that day you will not have any problems inside the CAT on that chapter. Right? Yeah, you have to work alone in this thing. People ask me, you must be knowing my percentiles in CAT. I got a 99.99 a few times, 99.97, 96. Various times, maybe 15 times or 20 I've given. I've been 99.97, 98, 99 kind of percentiles. So I often ask people, do you think when I'm solving the CAT, मेरे को doubt होता है कि नहीं होता है? Right? Do you think I have doubts or not? I have doubt. To tell you from the bottom of my heart, I have doubt in every second, third question. ये statement से ये करना है कि वो करना है. And when you have a doubt, who resolves it for you inside the exam? It is your brain, your doubt clearing resolution, doubt clearing mechanism inside your brain that you have set up that answers that question. And if you have been too much of a ask and tell kind of preparing guy, so you would be you would not have that resolution mechanism. So you look around and there will be nobody to tell you, because the guy next to you will be a 70 percentile. Right? So just remember that. And to answer Sri Harshini's question, what about CAT 20 aspirants who don't have 2-3 weeks to come back and solve? Take a 3-day break, do one round, chapters which you have not done. If you're a CAT 20 aspirant, I would assume that you've already done round 1 for a lot of the chapters. And the chapters which you have not done, if you're doing it today, take a 4-day break in between, then come back in after 4 days. But give it that time. It's like, see, quants development is like how a quants or DI, solving areas ka development jo hai na, it happens like how a sapling grows out of the land, out of the earth. Suppose I planted a sapling today inside a small seed of a tree inside the earth today. I put it inside, and it requires 100 buckets of water over the next 3 months. So I say, I will not have time to come back next 3 months. So what I'll do is I'll put 100 buckets of water today on it. Will I have a tree after 3 months? Obviously not. Right? So even if you have, let's say, a shorter time frame, let's say you say that I want to invest 20 hours on this chapter. So break it into 10 hours, 5 hours, 5 hours. Break it into 3 visits. Don't do 20 hours at one go. And maybe ho sakta hai 20 might not be sufficient for you. So you will have to see how much time you take to go through one round a serious one round of LOD 1 and 2. Right? And when you're doing a round, as I said, accept the fact that there will be some questions you can't solve. Because if you can solve everything, then you're ready for the exam. Tomorrow, you can take the exam on that chapter tomorrow. So if you have a solving skill deficiency, it will show up in the experiences you have in the questions. And that is exactly what you're trying to solve. And you know, I'll just share my screen again because this is very important for all of you. ये जो दो question types है ना, these two, this is your most valuable resource for preparing because the day you can start solving these, you're ready. ये तो solve कर लिया तुमने. The day you can start solving this, you're ready for the exam. So the most important resource of your CAT prep process is when you can actually get through this. And this is the perfect way to waste it. Ask and tell or read solutions. That's one of the reasons why I, particularly, if I have to give my book to somebody really close to me, I'll take away the answer keys and I'll take away the solutions. I'll say, don't. Let's assume you don't have them. You try to solve this book and solve. Take your time. Take 6 months. Take 8 months. Take 12 months. Solve every question inside this book, and at the end of it, you'll be ready for the CAT. The CAT can't hurt you in the next 10 years. Right? So timelines kya hai? Block 2-3 will be the longest timeline. The minimum timeline for block 2-3 is around 3 weeks. And that's the whole arithmetic. The maximum timeline can be around 2 months for it. If you're going for a 21 time frame. Block 4, the geometry mensuration, coordinate geometry, the minimum timeline is around 2 to 3 weeks again. And the maximum timeline can be around 5-6 weeks on that. Functions block 5, the minimum timeline in my view would be around 3 weeks and the maximum timeline can be around 6 to 8 weeks. Of course, this is for the first round. So if you want, and I'm also assuming that you're doing the other chapters and all things. But agar hours mein timeline define karna hai, the 3 weeks ka matlab hai, if I'm talking about, let's say you're putting 15-20 hours a week in Quants, so 45 hours ka timeline is. So just multiply by 15, the number of weeks I've talked about on the longer scale, right? Yes, I think you should do all the blocks because CAT is now a very distributed exam. It's distributed in all chapters, so you should not this thing. You can take a decision if you are in a struggle for time, Isha. Then you can take a decision about which chapters you want to go really deep into and which you don't want to. So then the big question that a lot of people ask me all the time: कि LOD3 करना है कि नहीं करना है? तो अगर मेरे को LOD3 नहीं करना होता तो मैं इतना बेवकूफ नहीं हूँ कि मैं तुमको वहां डाल के देता, right? So LOD3 is for people, first of all, is for people who want to go beyond the 99.5 percentile level, right? Or you want to go really deep into a chapter. You might have a 99 percentile, but you might say that in averages and percentages and arithmetic, I want to be really deep into my chapters, right? So part of your strategy might be, even a 99 percentile strategy might be 6 chapters I'm doing deep and 10 chapters I'm doing shallow, slightly less deep, and 4 chapters I'm doing shallow. So you can have that kind of strategy that will get you to 99. So obviously when you're going deep in the chapter, I mean, from my perspective, there are 6 chapters. There are 13 chapters in which LOD3 is there in my book. The only chapter where I say that don't touch it now, coordinate geometry, don't touch the LOD3. That is not something you need to solve. We'll be removing that in the next edition of the book. तो वो एक chapter है जिसमें तुमको नहीं चाहिए. You don't need to touch LOD3. In fact, वहाँ पे LOD1 ही कर लो तो बहुत है, अगर time कमी है नहीं तो if you got time to do the LOD1 and 2, right? But otherwise LOD3 out of 13 chapters, 6 chapters where I say that LOD3 is a must if you are wanting to cover CAT prep properly. These chapters are number systems, averages, ratio proportion. So 2 chapters from block 2-3 where I would say it's a must. Because the kind of structures and quantitative structures I've used in the LOD3s in these chapters, you'll find those across questions in your exams. You can look at past year questions, you can look at past year ZAT, IFT, CAT, all kinds of exams, and you'll see that LOD3 kind of structures, maybe not the whole question as it is, but if this is my question in LOD3, this structure has been used in questions in the exam. So, and as I said, it's a problem solving situation inside the exam. So if you have seen a problem or seen a structure in the question and in your practice, then it becomes much easier to solve it in the exam. So your preparation is now about making sure that you have seen every question type, right? So coming back to this, we are talking about 6 chapters in which, as I said, I would think it's compulsory to do the LOD3s. From block 1, both the chapters, I think it's important to do the LOD3s, number systems and progressions. From block 2, 3, averages and ratio proportion would be musts. And the other chapters in which, the other 6 chapters in which LOD3s are there, like percentage has an LOD3, profit and loss is an LOD3, time, speed, distance has an LOD3, time and work has an LOD3. Those LOD3s you can just, it could be a could do, or it could just be one round कि ठीक है देख लेते हैं जो solve होता है कर लेते हैं जो नहीं solve हुआ I'm not bothered about it. Fine, that you can take that approach in that. You don't need to get after every question in the other chapters, but these 6 chapters that I'm saying, उसमें तुमको करना चाहिए. Ideally you should do it. Of course देखो नहीं भी करोगे तो कुछ मतलब क्या, there's no need for you to go to a hang. खाना पीना तो मिल ही रहा होगा तो वो तो necessity क्या है life का, that is a philosophical question. But if you are, I'm talking in the context of you doing your prep properly. So number system progressions, average ratio proportion, and then 2 chapters from block 5, functions and equations. These 2 chapters. So 6 chapters on which I would recommend that you should do the LOD3, especially if you're a 21 aspirant. If you're a 20 aspirant, you might cut it short. You don't have the time to go through LOD3, you cut it short. Your risk increases slightly, but it's okay. मतलब उतना भी risk increase नहीं करता है. I mean, I can think of somebody who has solved number system already 1 and 2. I would not be very, very concerned about the risks he or she is taking in the exam of not getting this thing, right? We'll try to take the IPM mat, Mohit. You can try to take it. So coming back, so this is the solving area of Quants, and of course this is the book you have for the Quants section, which is currently there. And 2021 ke liye we'll be having the next edition, but if you're starting to prepare now, you don't want to wait for it because there are a lot of market related aspects before the editions are released. So you don't want to spoil. I mean, the timeline, how long you prepare is what is more important than getting the exactly correct book. So 8th to 9th edition mein, matlab, you can still do. Obviously, the 9th edition will be better and more suited, but the 8th edition for the time being can do for you. So as I said, the second area is verbal ability and reading comprehension. It's a reactive area. So here you're not training yourself for problem solving. This is not a problem solving area. This is about understanding the language, understanding the situations. And what happens, so you have to divide your prep into 2 parts. Improving your language and improving your solving. If your long language is sorted, improving your solving in verbal, and I'm going out on a limb while saying this, improving your solving in verbal is barely 2 months' time. If you don't need to improve your language, if your language is on par and at the level it needs to be, then improving your solving is just 2 months' time. But then when it comes to improving your language, that's a longer term perspective and longer term battle. Because when you talk about improving language, you think about it in 4 levels. And the verbal book that Meenakshi ma'am and I have written, she's my co-author in that. And this book, which is now 9th edition, just got released. So in this book, you don't need to worry about whether we're going to have a new edition. The next edition is only scheduled in 22 for it. We have a 2-year gap between editions. So the verbal ability and reading comprehension book is structured on the same structure. That we realize that language is, when you learn a language, let's say, forget you learning English, right? So older version अगर बहुत पुराने हैं तो then it will make a difference. DI 6th edition के पहले वाला edition, you will see that there's no connection to the current CAT structure because it was basically structurally created before the 17, 18, 19 exams, and CAT has changed quite a bit in data interpretation. Same thing with logical reasoning. So it does not make sense to use books which are very old. One edition behind is okay, but not in DI, because DI sixth edition was a major recast, and LR also was a major recast. So fifth LR fifth edition, we'll come to that when we get there. So coming back to this thing, English, maybe there's been changes in the CAT. They've become shorter passages, more inference-based questions. So we are trying to keep in touch with that in our reading comprehension and the various chapters. There have been specific focus on three question types in verbal: summaries and odd man out and parajumbles. So we have tried to keep that abreast here. Although we know that a lot of people use these books for other exams, so we try to cover the chapters that are required, so that we have not removed the fill in the blanks. Because if it was a strictly CAT book, there would be no fill in the blanks now, or there will be very little emphasis on it. But we have not reduced all that, because we know that you prepare for IFT and ZAT and NMAT also, and a lot of people use these books now for other exams, aptitude exams also. So we keep the other question types also in that. So improving a language, as I said, has four levels: word level, sentence level, paragraph level, and passage level. So word level and word level is essentially on three parts. It's on vocabulary, it's on phrasal verbs, and it's on idioms. Three things. So you need to develop your ability to understand the language in that. And we have these questions. For example, in the verbal book, we have created a high frequency and a low frequency and a medium frequency word list. So the high frequency word list you have to know, because if you don't know that, every second article you will have a problem. So if you go through the high frequency word list and you find that there are a lot of words which you have not heard of, that means there's a lot of gaps in your language. But if you're finding that high frequency mein tumko dikkat nahi, you know most of it, but medium frequency is where your problem is, and low frequency words, which are the most difficult words, वहाँ पे और problem है, तो then you need to do your work for that. ठीक है? So verbal, there's going to be no new addition. For quants, I really don't know when maybe sometime in March, April, or maybe earlier, we were trying to look at this thing. And it's not entirely in my hands, so I cannot comment on that when it will get released. So anyway, let's coming back to this issue. Improve your language. Improve on the verbal level. On the word level, focus on vocabulary and your phrasal verbs. So phrasal verbs are verbs that don't seem to be exactly, or they don't convey the same meaning as the two words added together. Right? So for example, if I use a go into, so go into has a different connotation from go up to or go this thing. It's not the addition of the two words. Right? So that is actually, for the non-native speaker, the phrasal verbs are the gap between understanding language and not understanding language. So if my South Indian friends here permit me to use a little bit of Hindi to explain this to you. Suppose you are trying to teach Hindi to somebody, and you teach him two words: kaan, ear, or kaatna, biting. So, and then you make a statement to him that वो मेरा कान काट रहा था, वो मेरा कान काटता है. So कान काटना as a phrase is very different from biting a ear that Mike Tyson did in his boxing match, right? So the connotation of the meaning when you add the words is very different from the connotation you need to get out of that sentence. And if you are this thing, so what I see a lot of people doing, कि vocabulary काम कर लेते हैं, they do vocabulary work, and they straight away go into the reading without doing the in-between work of the phrasal verbs. And then when they read a statement like वो मेरा कान काटता था, so the imagination is that somebody is biting your ear, which is obviously wrong in that situation. So that is why the phrasal verbs and the idioms are very critical connectors between non-native speakers and native speakers. So if you start understanding the way the language has morphed, when you create language like कान काटना, वो मेरा कान काट रहा था, या वो मेरा कान काटता था, या वो मेरा कान काटता है, इस mathematics में वो मेरा कान काट देता है, right? So that has a completely different connotation. which a native speaker will know, but a non-native speaker, unless he knows what that particular phrase or that particular phrasal verb means, he will not be able to connect at all. So if you are poor at language, you should focus a little bit on that. And we have our phrasal verb lists. You should go through them, and then you look at usage outside in your day-to-day life. You do a Google search of each of the 4 phrasal verbs, look at 5-10 uses, bring them into use. And the best way to improve your vocabulary is to bring it into use. You're not going to be able to memorize it. अगर तुम बैठ के memorize करोगे, I've seen it for the last 25 years. I've not seen a single student who's been able to memorize the entire word list properly. Right? So, and once you get the control of the words, then you will obviously have control of the sentence. If you can control a sentence, then control of sentence means in language, improving language, means what happens in CAT is, if you look at our reading in our academic system, the moment we could do 10-word sentences, we said that I can read English. Ram goes to school, I can make a sentence. Ram and Sham go to school, I can make a sentence. I can read a sentence, I can understand a sentence. So in our biodata box in school, we used to tick read, write, speak English. Right? But there's a gap between the sentences which you have experienced as 10th standard students and the kind of sentences you're going to come across in the CAT. If you pick up any normal question or RC passage from the CAT, you will see that average sentence length. You pick up any paragraph and you just do a quantitative measure of what is the average length of a sentence. You will see that the average sentence length in the CAT at times goes up to 35-40 words. So there's a paragraph in which there are 200 words and there are only 5 sentences. So 40 words per sentence. So inside a 40-word sentence, यहाँ पे तो simple था, Ram and Sham going to school. So there's no complexity. But in a 40-word sentences, the subjects are replaced by pronouns. Which subject is replaced by which pronoun? Which object is replaced by which pronoun? Where the subject and object interchange each other. These kind of plays, if you have not created, so you will always face a problem. So once you get your vocabulary and your phrasal verbs in place, your next focus in language should be on sentence comprehension. And we have given you exercises on understanding ideas in sentences and ideas in paragraphs on the inside the book. So that first part of the book is very important structurally to understand what you need to do for language. Right? I've specifically talked about the fact that you don't need to go after speed reading because speed reading is not important for the CAT. You have 600 word passages which have to be done in around 5-7 minutes if you need to be close to the 100 percentiles in language. So you need 100 word per minute reading speed. कोई भी speed reading का course अगर उठाओगे या book उठाओगे तो any self-respecting speed reading book will not tell you less than 1000 words per minute. Right? 1000 words per minute अगर किसी का reading speed, if somebody tells me कि 1000 words per minute is my reading speed because I have followed this speed reading book or this speed reading course, I laugh at him because I tell him कि ठीक है, CAT का passage है, 600 word का है, 0.5 minutes for reading it, 0.6 minutes for reading, 36 seconds I'm giving you to read it, and then you solve the question. So 2 minutes may give me the answers. And nobody can do it, of course. Right? So it's laughable. That whole line of preparation is laughable. Right? So don't go that line. You just need 200 words per minute, but you need full comprehension. Right? So coming back. So as I said, once you understand those words and phrases, Divyansh, you bring them into your language. 5 words a day. That's it. 5 phrases a day. That's it. Don't try to do 200 because you cannot retain them. और एक बार sentence पे control आ गया तुम्हारा, once you understand how to read 40-word sentences, then you can obviously go ahead and understand paragraphs. You'll get control on the paragraphs. And when you get control on the paragraphs, you get control on the passage. Once you get control on the passage, you are in control of the paper. That's as simple. And then, as I said, once your language is in place, your solving is, that's the structure. How much time you take for the structure is different. Will matter. But there is an outcome in English, definitely. Because as I always tell the native Hindi speakers or the native non-English speakers from South India, somebody is a Tamil speaker, etc. I tell them that if I leave you for 1 year in the US, 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 1 year in the What will you do? Will you keep speaking in Tamil or Hindi, or will you learn English there? And 1 year later, will you be able to communicate in English or not? So you need to understand that there's a resolution for a language which you need to pick up, right? So that's the language structure. This is a 1 hour session only, and I have to talk about all the areas. So I'm going with my most important thoughts. Of course, you can expand those thoughts and understand what I'm trying to say here to understand what we are talking about. So my logical reasoning book is split into two parts, actually three parts. But the first two parts that are split, and it's a fifth edition. And इसमें definitely Quants में चलो seventh edition अगर तुम्हारे पास है, you don't have the eighth one, so it might still do. Wait for the ninth one. Till that time, use the seventh edition, and then when the ninth comes, buy it and use it. But in the logical reasonings book and the DI book, logical reasoning is fifth edition, DI is in the sixth edition. If you don't use the latest ones, then I mean the fourth edition of logical reasoning is the CAT 2012-13 map book, and 12-13-14 map book mostly. And the CAT has changed drastically in the last 3-4 years. This thing, the goalpost has changed, so you can't be hitting a goal on the same place. So you will have to refer to this if you are using my books for it. So in my books, I've clearly divided my reasoning into two parts: reasoning for CAT and reasoning for non-CAT exams. So non-CAT exams, I mean IFT, SNAP, NMAT. ज़ैट में just remember XAT में reasoning का कोई special question नहीं होता है. कभी कभी some question might come in reasoning, which might be inside the decision making section, but otherwise there's no reasoning question in the ZAT. You might have a year of ZAT with zero reasoning questions, right? But SNAP, IFT, NMAT, CMAT, CET Maharashtra, IP MAT, some of you are taking. For all of you, the reasoning for non-CAT exam chapters also becomes important. But for CAT, you can just look at those 9 chapters, the first 8-9 chapters, which are there in the reasoning for CAT part of the book. So these chapters are 4 kinds of puzzles: arrangements, rankings, team selections, and generic puzzles. 4 kinds of puzzles. Puzzles is the most favorite question in the CAT. You'll always invariably have 1 puzzle or 2 puzzles in every CAT exam in reasoning. Then last few years I realized that quantitative reasoning has become a major this thing. So there's a chapter on quantitative reasoning in the logical reasoning book. And I pride myself on my LRDI books more than the Quants book also, because I think it was easy to write the Quants book, because Quants is very clearly defined into chapters. Very easy to define the chapters. So all you need to do is research the chapters well, think about the chapters well, and build good quality question banks that'll work out all the kinds of structures. And this has happened. I worked out a structure in CAT in my first edition in 2003 कि इस चैप्टर में ये क्वेश्चन इस तरह का क्वेश्चन बन सकता है. CAT has used it in 2017. So that has happened so many times, and it keeps happening, which is why the books are useful for people. And if they're not useful, obviously nobody will buy. So it's very clear that this thing, it's very simple to write the Quants book, for me at least. But the LR and the DI book was much bigger challenges for me to write, because structuring a subject which is principally not structured, it's very difficult to structure a subject which is principally by default not structured by itself. So it was difficult to write these books, because creating a pedagogy out of thin air, what should be the pedagogy, and my only perspective in writing the books is if somebody goes through the solving of the books, by the end of it, he should be ready for eventualities that he will or she will face in the CAT. I can proudly say with the 5th edition of LR and the 6th edition of DI, I am achieving that. Because if I look at the 2019 DI and LR questions, I don't think anybody who solved my book properly in LR or DI will ever have a problem in any question set of 2019, right? So the reasoning for CAT, reasoning for non-CAT exam, reasoning for CAT में last 3 years fifth chapter of quantitative reasoning. The sixth chapter is set theory and network diagrams. The seventh one is games and tournaments. That's very, very critical. Is my voice okay now? Maybe my net fluctuated. Wait, I'll just close all my other non-used tabs. So at least it reduces the net usage here. It's fine now? Yeah, ठीक है. So then after set theory network diagrams, there's a special chapter on games and tournaments. I pride myself for writing that because nobody has ever created any theory for games and tournaments. And I wrote the theory over 2-3 nights. कि क्या theory होना चाहिए इसमें with solved examples, etc. So that's there in this. And as you know, games and tournaments also a very critical element of the CAT these days. You always have, although games and tournaments can also be thought of as table reading exercises, but we've created a chapter on that. And then sometimes you have nowadays cubes and dice per questions. So I've also put that in reasoning for CAT, although बहुत important नहीं है reasoning for CAT के अंदर cubes and dice. So it's more or less a reasoning for non-CAT exam, this thing. But CAT has a propensity to ask dice and cube questions. One off in one 2 to 3 years. So that's why I put it there. And then once you do the reasoning for CAT, then the reasoning for non-CAT exams has all those chapters like your direction test and your series and sequences, and those are the kind of questions which you get in banking empirical kind of exams, which are also asked in the non-CAT MBA exams. So they covers that. So if you're preparing for the other exams, you'll focus on those questions also. Right, so that's it, and then once you go through these two, then you go through the previous year questions. So I've given around 8-10 years of previous year questions of CAT and that and IFT. जो reasoning question I asked for निकाल के we have looked at it and solved all of it for you. But don't read the solutions, solve it yourself, and then come back to this thing. And of course there are mock tests, etc. for your practice, where I've given you 4 sets in 30 minutes. So of course you'll modify it a little bit in the context of CAT 20, but 21 we are expecting that CAT might go back to 3 hours. So we'll keep the structures same in our mock test. So that's the reasoning book. As I said, it's in the 5th edition right now. So it's in the 5th edition, and it's been a great partnership for me actually with McGraw. Very very straight and ethical publishers in terms of a lot of this thing. Very high quality people who work on the books. It is just not me working on the books. It's actually a joint effort. मेरा काम तो I tell them that my work stops when I finish my typing on my computer and I send the file. उसके बाद the entire processing of the book happens through it goes through various hands, at least 5-6 hands before it finally comes into the shape that you see it in. And while we have had some challenges in the past about errors, etc. happening, but what we have realized is that it's actually invariably in all attribute books. You can look at, even the CAT has had exam errors. So I tell my readers to forgive me for those errors, because at times you really cannot control what the typesetter is doing at that last point. So and maybe just the fact that my books are solved much more than others, people discover those much more than they are discovered in other books. But you pick up any book and you show it to me, I'll show you 20 errors, 10 times at least the number of errors that are there. So we now take a very very strong perspective in it. The last point now I've introduced this thing, which is why we have started going down on the number of errors. So so I now, what I do is, before the edition comes, I try to solve the whole book before I okay it. But sometimes if you're solving 400 questions in a day, so you yourself might make some mental error in the thinking. So कुछ errors उसमें बच जाते हैं. But we try to make sure that it's one in this thing. And I also have a email address where, if you're using my books, if you find any questions where you find some doubts or errors, you can just refer them to me. If there's an error, I'll thank you for it. and we'll change it. But normally I get a lot of mails on that, but I see that 50-60% of the times the student is thinking wrong also. 30-40% times there might be a small typing error somewhere, but that's okay. So anyway, let's come back to the next one, DI. And again, I'm pretty proud of what I did in my data interpretation book last year. I switched it from a DI book, which was kind of structured around the earlier versions of the CAT, to a completely fresh book. So it's always the sixth edition of the book. I actually call it the first edition of the new book mentally in my conversations, because you will not be able to recognize that it's the same book if you're going from the fifth to the sixth. So what I did, what I realized, now CAT does not tell you this. In DI prep, CAT does not tell you that traditional DI alag karna hai or logical DI alag karna hai. CAT will just tell you that DI hai. All exams will just tell you DI. But every once in a while, you see, and in fact CAT more than once in a while, you see all the time now. In CAT, there are so many questions where there's so much logic to be used before you come to the solving part of the DI question. Right, so I realized as a pedagogical approach in my teaching, last 3-4 years, I've realized that CAT prep is no longer about the kind of CAT prep we used to do in 2003, 4, 5, or even 2009, 10, 11 about data interpretation. That and traditional DI, logical DI से अगर one word, one sentence difference पूछोगे मेरे से, so what I'll say is that traditional DI is that मैंने दिया 2-3 बार दिया, I have qualified it, but I don't have the same relationship with it. I qualified it the first time. I got calls from XLRA. Every time I've given it, I got a 99.8, 9 plus. But I take the CAT more because they should not give the papers. That paper हमेशा देता था अपना. So there are a lot of reasons for that. So anyway, let's come back to this. So pedagogically, I realized that there are two kinds of DI questions, very different. CAT does not tell you this, but pedagogically, I realized that there are two kinds of questions for this. One kind of question is where it's about there's some given data, it's fixed, the data is fixed. And based on the data, they are asking you to draw out information from that data and answer questions. So in those questions, what happens is essentially the question will ask you what is the percentage change between this number and that number. And both those numbers will either be there in the data or they will be derivable from the data. So your question will give you a certain formula, this percentage change or this ratio I want, or the highest or the lowest of this value, or the second highest, second lowest nikalo. So in such questions, the process of solving a question is just extraction of data. You need to freeze the formula and then extract the data and put that data into the formula and calculate. So you don't do any processing of the data. You just do reading of the data, extraction of the relevant numbers from the data. So if they tell me sales of 2016 to sales of 2017 का ratio बताओ किसी company के products का, तो I'll go into the chart or the graph or the table and I'll see कि sales 2016 का value क्या है, उसको numerator में डालूंगा, sales 2017 का value को denominator में डालूंगा, and I'll calculate that and I'll check which option works. Instead of that, they can ask me कि ये 5 ratios में largest ratio क्या है. So then they are giving me 5 ratios with 5 numerators and 5 denominators. I have to extract data. So that's traditional DI. The logical DI part, उसमें क्या होता है कि the data itself has to be processed. And you have to take it through 8 to 10 steps of processing based on clues given to you. And only then does the data become readable. But the good part in logical DI is that once you can get through those 8-10 steps, you get all the answers. You don't have to do any more processing. So there's very little calculation in that, etc. So the kind of skills required in logical DI is slightly different from traditional DI. So when I was recasting my DI book in 2019, last year, based on what has happened in CAT 17 and what we are anticipating in 18 and what had also happened in CAT 16, I realized that I need to do this because there's no resource right now apart from my books. I don't know whether people have copied it now or not, but they do copy me and they've been doing that for the last 15 years. Other authors, institutes, etc. So a lot of them just pick up questions from my books and change them and do it. But that's okay. That's part of being the leader in the industry. So the point I'm trying to make is that when you prepare, so when I want to recast it, I realized that I need to give a total experience of traditional DI to my student, to my reader, and I give a experience of logical DI to my reader. And that's what I did. I said, okay, let's segregate this. I looked at the entire question banks of the last 20 years in different exams. I said, which are the logical DI questions? What structures have they used? So first of all, segregation of the question banks, and then trying to create question banks like that. So that whole thing was created in that format, and very proud to say that now this is the only book which gives you that resource now, where you can structurally work on your traditional DI, get your traditional DI strong, and then attack your logical DI. So a lot of people ask me a question which I think is not right. The question they ask me is कि आजकल तो CAT में सब logical DI आता है. Do I need to prepare a traditional DI? So my answer to that is yes, traditional DI is very important because of three major reasons. First, CAT में सिर्फ logical DI नहीं आता है. That's the biggest misconception. CAT does not tell you कि logical पूछूंगा कि traditional पूछूंगा. So last year CAT 2019 CAT, look at both the slots. Out of 4 DI sets, you will find 2 sets which are traditional because they are just data extraction sets. There was no processing of data required. So they would be qualifying clearly as traditional DI. Right? So big misnomer. First reason. Second reason, I told you I'll give you 3 reasons why doing traditional DI is important. Second reason is your IFT, your ZAT. ZAT में DI अगर तुम ठीक कर लोगे, तुम्हारा quant से पूरा pressure खत्म हो जाता है. Right? I'm both at Unacademy. I teach DI a lot, and I'm also available on Mindworks, which is my institute. So where of course I'm completely mentoring you. So coming back to this thing, traditional DI second reason for why traditional DI is important. ZAT में 6 question आते हैं traditional DI के in the DI QA DI section. And ZAT में क्या है, if you solve around 14-15 questions in the QA DI section, you will almost be sure of getting through to XLRA exam. तो उसमें से अगर 25-26 questions होते हैं, अगर उसमें से 6 question DI के हैं, you can get all these 6 done because they are traditional DI questions. There's nothing in it if you have practiced traditional DI. So your pressure of the quants goes away. The remaining 20 questions, you just have to do 8 questions out of 20. So every 5 questions, you just have to do 2 in the quants. And you're getting a 14-15 score, which is almost with a 15 score in QADI section. If you just clear sectional qualifying in verbal and decision making section, you're through that. So strategically, although that में सिर्फ 2 ही question DI के होते हैं, 2 sets, 6 marks, 6 questions, but strategically it's very important to master DI, traditional DI for that. Because if you can, as I said, otherwise if you don't know DI well, तो वो 6 questions में सिर्फ 2-3 ही कर पाओगे. So to get a target score of 11-12, you're 14-15. You need 12 more questions from the 20. So every 60% of the questions you need to solve, or 60% net score you need from the remaining 20. It's difficult to keep 60% net score. It's very easy to keep 40% net score out of the 20 quants questions. So you will need to work on that. So that's why the other reason why it's important is IFT, completely traditional TI driven, very strategically important in IFT. You can watch my YouTube videos and all. Also, मैंने सब चीज बताएं. I'll share my YouTube channel and all towards the end. And also you can look at exams like SNAP, NMAT. They're all traditional DI completely. So that's the second reason. And the third biggest reason why you should also prepare traditional DI well is because traditional DI is the base for logical DI. तुमको अगर data extraction नहीं आता है, तो तुम logical DI भूल जाओ. You can't do it. ठीक है ना? So don't make the mistake of कि मैं सीधा logical DI कर लेता हूँ. It is like saying कि मैं चलना सीख. There's no need for me to walk if I want to run a 100-meter race. चलना सीखना क्या जरूरी है? दौड़ना ही सीख लेता हूँ. Doesn't work. Right? So this is the 6th edition of this, and this is the latest book that we came out. This is a long pending book actually from my side. Actually, we had this book earlier, 2008, 9, 10, 11. But that book we kind of withered away because CAT stopped releasing question papers. So this book में 17, 18, 19 and 2009, 99 to 2008. Every question of these years of CAT you will find segregated into chapters completely. We have purposely not put questions from 9 to 16 because 9 to 16 questions अगर हम डालते इसमें, we would have been lying to you because nobody has 9 to 16 questions. And the problem with 9 to 16, I mean, 2009 there were 40 sessions in the CAT, 20 days, 2 sessions every day. So if I put 9 questions, just, and some people have done it unfortunately, because everybody does not obey the same standard of ethics. So we have at McGraw-Hill, and even my perspective is that you can't lie in your book, right? So suppose I write 4 questions and I say CAT 2009 में था. To you as a student really will never come to know कि था कि नहीं था. You can't find it from anywhere. So you'll take it from me कि था. Right? And मैं उस पे लिख दूँ memory based, तो तुम कोर्ट में भी challenge नहीं कर सकते. So unfortunately, a lot of books have done that. I have seen books by other publishers जहाँ पे मेरे DI book से सीधा set उठा के डाल दिया है. And I know that I have created that set. And this is unfortunate, but it's true. I know I've created that set. And they've given this as a CAT 2013 question. So just question bank बनाना है, memory based बनाना है, कोई legal challenge तो कर नहीं सकता है, तो बना दो. Right? So we actually discontinued this book because I did not want to, McGraw-Hill and I, we decided in between that we can't lie to this thing. Other books were saying कि मेरे book में imagine 2008 में मैंने रोक दिया questions को. And other books were saying it 13, 14, 15th of book. So obviously who will buy my book? And I cannot go and tell everybody at the shop counter that this is the story behind these books. So that's why we discontinued. We said let's kill this book. But when now CAT has got 3 versions, 6 sets, 6 exams of it, we decided, and I got some time during the lockdown to actually work on it. So we decided that we should come out with a book of this nature, which gives that this thing. So this has just got launched, and from the initial reviews, I'm getting people liking the book. So you can use this. It's the buy now is there in this also. You can go into Amazon, and I think Flipkart also has it, and all major online portals have it. So as I said, for any connections with me, this is, if you find any errors in my book, you can mail it to me here. I'll personally look at it and make sure that I reply to you, and also thank you for it, and then of course change those this thing. And for more from my side, you can look at my YouTube channel. Surya was asking me, Mindworks is the institute that we run, Arun Sharma Mindworks, and also I'm available on Academy Plus where I do my courses, but this is where you can see me on my YouTube channel. The Arun Sharma Academy is a new YouTube channel which I've started, so you can look at that. That's this thing. And Meenakshi Upadhyay's YouTube channel is the Verbal Teacup. She's starting that, so you'll get good content and stuff coming up from this. And these ones are not just for CAT. We are not going to be CAT specific in these. These are going to be wider issues on this, right? IBMAT, just do the LOD 1 and 2, LOD 1 and maybe some LOD 2s, easy part of LOD 2 for you, Siddharth. Right? So you can just focus on that, and that should be sufficing for this thing. So this is the scan code, bar scan code for QR scan code. It's not called the bar scan, and sometimes slightly outdated. The QR scan code for purchasing the books, you can purchase from here with this QR scan, and this is the complete set of books which is now available with respect to this thing. So I'm open to questions now. I have answered most of the questions. So Prasad, the H.A. Prasad is asking, will the current change in the CAT exam pattern put any effect on our prep for 21? No, it does not. It does not even change the prep for 20. So please don't have an issue with that. Just process will remain same. Manish says Quants and LRDI books you have purchased for this year, and you want to proceed effectively for 90+%. I'll just try to cover most of the things that you can, Manish. Just create a plan and create that plan for minimum times that I said. DILR में क्या है कि data interpretation में मतलब the minimum preparation is 100 sets on traditional DI and 100 sets on logical DI. Practice that and you should be okay. The maximum preparation can be 300 sets each. So your preparation has to vary somewhere between, because DI and LR are both experiential subjects. It is not so theory driven. So what you need to do, you need to learn from someone how to solve questions. Somebody can show you 3-5 questions. I've done it in my books also. I've handled you for a certain time with questions. You can learn from that. There are videos on my YouTube channel also, which I release from time to time about certain questions कि इसको कैसे solve करना चाहिए. So I mean, there's a small part of watch. You should watch maybe 10-20 sets in DI and then push yourself into solving it, right? And reasoning mein, for each of the question types, I said minimum preparation is 25 sets of each question type, and maximum can be 100 sets of each question type. So you have to vary your preparation according to how much time you have left, right? Older version, I gave you answer eternally imaginary. If I'm using older version of Arun Sharma books, depends on which version. DI before 6th edition, I'll not recommend. LR before 5th edition, I'll not recommend. Quant 8th edition कर सकते हो, 7th कर सकते हो, especially if you're waiting for the 9th or 7th है तो use कर लो उसको, that's okay. Verbal also, if you want the latest kinds of passages and practice content, the 9th will be what is this thing, right? थोड़ा बहुत DI करना पड़ेगा मृदुला. You can't just say that I'll do LR only, because आजकल बहुत बार जब तुम LR करते हो ना, तो you don't know whether you're doing a DI question or an LR question, because quantitative reasoning and logical DI are very close to each other. So sometimes you don't realize whether it's on this side or that side. So don't take that risk, because core LR, pure LR questions, अगर दो ही set आए exam में तो क्या करोगे? You need to have a little bit of experience of DI there. Right? For CAT 21 aspirant, mocks should be Akshat around March, April earliest, but June is also okay. June 21 is also okay. Right? So all good. I hope I have answered all your questions, and thank you for all the love that I get on the books, etc. It's been a great journey for me, publishing these books, writing these books, keeping them updated, and I honestly tell people I've got much more than I've deserved from the outcomes that these books have given me. So I realized, first time I realized that the book has a different life than who I am, was when a student of mine came to me. It's a funny story. He came to me and said, "Sir, Arun Sharma laga liya hai." I was looking around myself, what does he mean by this? Then I realized he's talking about that book that he's talking about. This happened in 2003. Arun Sharma laga liya hai. That was the year the Quants book came out. So Arun Sharma laga liya hai is very different. The book is very different from me as an individual. So you realize that, and then you make sure that you try to do your best on every page and every part of the content. So I hope it was a pleasure for me for being here. We're sorry for the late start to the session, and I hope you got a perspective. And as I said, you can follow these channels. A lot of good content I want to bring out on these YouTube channels. You can follow them, and that's the mail ID for any errors that you see in the book. I would personally respond to you on that. Right? Thank you so much. What question, Kanza? Which question was it? Have you not answered? If you can just copy paste your question, I'll answer that before I end. I don't see any. Passage solving, should we go for reading the whole passage or should we read the questions first? I would think that you should read the passage first, Kanza. ठीक है, कभी कभी कर सकते हो थोड़ा बहुत, but CAT में बहुत work नहीं करता हो. Easier exams are trying to work that you first read the question and find out what kind of questions there are, and then you're reading the passage. This thing. See, Ghazal, first timer or your second timer, your 10th timer, doesn't matter. 10.5 percentile logic is score around 60-65% marks in the exam. ठीक है, GRE prep थोड़ा बहुत करेगा, but 70% of it is different. ठीक है, चलो, thank you so much. I'll wind up then. It was a pleasure being with all of you, and keep this thing, and do connect to me, and would love to guide all of you. Thank you so much, and thank you to McGraw-Hill for this opportunity. Bye bye everybody.